Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Lovely to see you. And this time I shall be speaking, I hope, as myself, with perhaps a little inspiration. But unlike my experience last evening, I've asked my helpers if they will let me have a go this time, and I think they will. There's something I'd like to say before we start this lecture, and that is that there's a lot of people here at this conference, and one of the things which I found a little distressing following my talk last night was that people had come to me after that talk, and I find that there are amongst you all people here of many beliefs. I've had people come to me who are of various denominations of Christianity, people who are of the Jewish persuasion, people who come from unusual cults, members of the Fellowship of Isis, and which tells me that there are many, many faiths here. And therefore it disturbs me if I hear of any one faith saying, you are down there and I am right and up here. So let's start saying that all of us see our God, or what we conceive of a higher being, in our own way, and let us think kindly and lovingly of other people and the way they think. And if, ladies and gentlemen, if I put it to you this way, if everybody followed this advice which I've just given, which they who guide me, would you have Northern Ireland today? Would you have the Palestinian troubles today? You would not. So let's start with that in mind before we go any further, and hope that the harmony which we can bring together exists throughout this conference, and there is not this clash, the ego clash, because let's face it, ladies and gentlemen, many people see God in their image and likeness, don't they? If you think about it, don't they? They see God as them, and if anybody should for a moment suggest that there could be anything higher than themselves that doesn't look like them, E-G-O. Upon that note, let us get on with our subject. The role of mysticism in the modern world. First of all, I should like to define what I mean by mysticism. Now, we often hear talk of a saint or a master, and people say he's a real mystic, a really holy person, a person uncontaminated by the values of the material world, someone who gives off an air or a vibration of something which is different from the herd. We think perhaps of Mother Teresa of Calcutta, or of Carl Jung, the psychologist, who I think was a great mystic, and I'm sure many agree. So the mystic, one could say, is the person who transcends the normal mode of material thinking and exists partly in a paranormal world where the mind encompasses sensations and dimensions external or exterior to our immediate surroundings. But unlike the insane person, who also experiences strange things, the mystic reaches to what we, for want of a better term, would call the loftier regions. I'd like to define a few terms here, because I think many people have the wrong idea about what they mean. We hear people talk of psychics, occultists, mystics. Can one, for example, be a psychic but not a mystic? And can one be an occultist and not a mystic? Or can one be a mystic and neither of those things, or not psychic at all? Where does that leave us? So let's take these terms one at a time, and then when we know what we're talking about, we can see how they fit into modern society today. The term occultist, for example, it does not mean, contrary to what many people believe, people leaping around in the altogether in the little page of the Sunday papers. The true meaning of the word, it's a word which comes to us from astronomy, actually. And to occult a thing means to obscure it. When two planets are occulted, one comes in front of the other and hides it. It is that which is hidden or obscure. In other words, it is not terribly obvious. You might come into a room and you might see several things which are obvious to you, but something else isn't obvious. And unless somebody points out to you and says, look, up in that corner there, and you say, oh, good gracious, I'd never have seen that if you hadn't pointed out to me. Well, that's the occult is. It's the things which some people know, which they've studied, which most people maybe haven't the time to study, or which haven't been pointed out to them, or which they haven't searched in their minds, or perhaps in their higher minds or transpersonal selves for the answers. I had it explained to me once by the master who taught me, and he said, the person who is a practicing occultist is one who tries to control, by positive thought, the energies around them. And this control is gained through a series of disciplines which are known as initiations. It's like if we want to learn something, and it's very difficult, and we want to learn it at school. So we try very hard, we study extra hours, we put ourselves out, and we perhaps have a lot of deprivation. We're at university, maybe we don't go and play games with the others. Or maybe if we're at school, we forego treats in order to learn and study. We go through our own initiations. And whenever you learn something which is a little different, and unusual, takes a little more time, a little more research, then that is a form of initiation. And often, when people are studying occult matters, they go through a lot of, to use a modern term, flack from people around them who get a little frightened or who don't understand it. Or, and more is the case, who resent somebody else knowing more than they do. They haven't the courage to go and look for themselves, but they start the business. We've all heard it. Who does he think he is? Who does she think she is? Do you realise, ladies and gentlemen, that if nobody ever thought they were anybody sufficiently enough to search, you would have none of the things you have in the world today? Nobody would have invented anything. You'd still be living in caves. It is because some person somewhere receives inspiration or impulse and believes themselves to have something to contribute that the world has advanced. Sometimes all the advancements aren't good, as we know, but there are a lot of many beautiful things. So, that is what that is all about. Now let us take our medium, or psychic, or receptive, or sensitive, whatever you like to call them. One who is receptive to the collective unconscious, which exists interdependently of time and space, hence the ability to see the past and the future. Such a mind is also receptive to the influence of intelligences external to themselves and their own immediate environment. In other words, you hear voices, you are aware of beings of light, you are aware of other dimensions which exist at the same time as your own. You know, I was thinking, in this room at the moment, we are in one time, and we see us all here. But you know, if you could just switch over for a moment onto another side of your mind, you would be aware that the room is actually full. There are all sorts of beings who want to help each one of you. Each one of you has someone with you who is trying to help your mind to understand what I'm saying. I have those with me who are trying to help me to explain to you because I have my inadequacies. And sometimes, when one is very inadequate or very tired, they come and help us, and they help us to explain these things. And we may be criticised for it. People say, who do they think they are? Putting it on, or something like that. It doesn't matter what people say, if the truth is coming out, and the light is coming forth. I leave it for each of you to judge. But as I look round this room now, I see not just your faces, I see many standing around all of you. And some are ones you have loved, some are not. Some are beings from other dimensions, some are beings from the fairylands, some are beings from other planets. There are those around who are attracted because like attracts like. What you open your mind to and what you believe in, you will attract. Because, let's face it, if you're a child at school and you're good at ball game, you will soon find a ball game to join in, won't you? It's the same principle. If you're a quiet person and you want to sit and read, you'll soon find a library to read in. And those who wish to guide us and help us will be attracted to those of like mind who are prepared to open their minds to us and let us in, and then they can instruct us, and then we can learn. So that's, let us say, the sensitive or the psychic. The mystic, again, a person often who has religious type leanings,
who takes his or her faith a step or more beyond the ordinary dogmatic concepts of men and reaches upwards into the cosmos. But in this reaching up, he or she may not necessarily direct cosmic forces or receive them as a medium does, but simply observe them. And in observing, the mystic enriches his soul with knowledge and understanding, and we hope will pass it on to others. He may not always be able to translate what he sees, perhaps it is terribly personal. But perhaps he does possess the necessary terms of reference so that he can convey these experiences to other people and retain with that conveyance a sense of holiness and detachment. But again, many mystics are also psychics and healers and welfare officers and even doctors and people who work in the material world. Many people, I believe, such as Carl Jung and Einstein and people of that caliber, were also mystics. And you know, we shouldn't limit our concept of the psychic to someone who sits and does readings. I think I've told some of you before the little story, which is true. For those I haven't, I'll tell it you. But this was told to me at the SAGB in London. Just before the war, there was a small group, a psychic group, who met. And the medium in charge was a lady, and she had a contact with a doctor, and this doctor in spirit was trying to give her the ingredients for an invention. And he kept giving her these ingredients, and she said when they talked it over after, "Oh, I think this is all up the creek. I think we're on the wrong course here somewhere. This doesn't make sense, it's a load of rubbish." And then one day, the poor weary soul in desperation came through and he said, "I know I'm not getting through here, but I have finally found a person whose mind is sufficiently receptive for me to get this through." And he said, "But it's someone in the scientific profession, but I'll give you his name." And he gave the name. Well, sure enough, just after that, war was declared. They closed the group, the men went off to fight, and the records were put away at the SAGB, which in those days was called the MSA, or Maryland Spiritual Association, as many of you may know. Well, a year or so passed, and then one morning, this lady who'd been running the group opened her newspaper and she saw wonderful new invention, helping the wounded, penicillin. It has been invented by Dr. Alexander Fleming. She thought, that name's familiar. Penicillin, and then she read it's composed of moles, and she thought, my God, our records. And they rushed up and got them out. And there was the name, and there was the formula, which they all laughed at. So you see, sometimes the mystic and the psychic isn't always the obvious one who's doing it for a living. Sometimes they can be in government, in medicine, in science, in the humanities, any way you like, out in the jungle if you like, with a tom-tom, but they're still there. And I hope this illustrates this. Mysticism goes hand in hand with contemplation, meditation, and often what is considered the Eastern way, so that we think often of mystics as being Maharaja types or strange people from the East who sit cross-legged in meditation. But there have been many Western mystics, such as Thomas Aquinas, Teresa of Avila, Jacob Boehme. Many of these have been occultists as well as mystics. Aquinas, for example, was a very, very well-known magician in his day, but because he was a member of the Christian Church at the time, he was respected. And they said, of course, he's a saint. Because as many of you must have realized already, that if you perform miracles or hear voices under the umbrella of certain religious establishments, they'll canonize you for it, dearie. But I can assure you, if you hear the same voices and have the same experiences, but you don't belong to that religious establishment, you're likely to get dubbed fraud, fake, or shoved in a load of witch pond a few years ago. But this, you see the folly of it all. It's absolutely so silly when you think of it. It's the old story, isn't it, of who you know and not what you know, in all fields. It is said that the mystic strives to achieve divine union while still in an earthly body. In the East and in yoga, they call this state samadhi, ecstasy or bliss. And many famous mystics, such as St. Teresa, are supposed to have achieved this. Of course, there must be many people who have achieved it who just don't talk about it, because that's not what they are to do in this life. Perhaps they're doing other helpful things to humanity and learning in many ways. There's a saying in Buddhism about the man who went forth to seek God, and he sought God under a stone, and he lifted the stone up. And as he lifted the stone up, he became so intrigued with all the things around the stone and all the lovely little insects that were running around that he forgot what he was looking for in the first place. And so he spent the rest of his life concentrating on all the things he saw around the stone and under the stone. And it wasn't until he came to pass over that he realised that he had originally gone to look for God there and not actually found him. He'd seen other things instead. And this is an old saying in Buddhism. So that we may seek lots of exciting mystical experiences. But just because they're exciting and they're mystical, they may not always teach us the truth. They may lead us off on blind alleys. There's another lovely little mystical story about, in Buddhism also, about the man who wanted to find union with the divine. And he woke up in the night, one night, and his wife and child were there sleeping with him. And he woke and he thought, it's no good, I have got to achieve this union. I have got to go and find God. I've got to go and find this what it is I'm looking for. So he arose, he girded his loins, and he left his wife and child and went out to search. And he searched for many, many years, just the way the Buddha did. He searched in many mystical groups, in many religions. He searched and he searched, and in the end he became an old man, and he sat down under a tree to die. And as he sat down there, he cried and he wept, and he said, God, I've searched everywhere for you, and I've searched and I've been in this religion, and I've been in that belief and that faith. Why did you not come to me? And the voice of God spoke, and he said, my son, you left me, but then you left your wife and child. So you see, the old saying that God or the universe is everywhere with us all is true. You don't have to go round into strange states to experience it. Every one of you in this room is just as capable of experiencing it in the ordinary things you do in life. You can be your own mystic, making a cup of tea in the morning, or realising as you watch television what a terrible state the world is in. Look at the suffering you see and think to yourself, I want to help. What can I do? There's a tremendous amount you can do. Every time you see that, if you just stop for a minute and send out a thought, just one little momentary thought of love and caring, and ask those who are higher than us to help that situation. If everybody thought that way, there wouldn't be the situation in the first place. It's because so many don't that there is. And that's what mysticism is about. Now, we could go into a lot of details about the type of the way that many people carry out mysticism. You've all heard of what are known as monkish mortifications, when people go without food and fast, and they say that if I do all these things and I beat myself up, then I will realise these and I will become a mystic. But any doctor will tell you that excessive fasting and endurance of physical pain will induce hallucinations. And this is the weapon of the mind bender, who knows, as does the modern psychiatrist, how to induce abreaction by calculated procedures of chemical imbalances in the system. In other words, if you starve yourself and knock yourself about and you have an hallucination, that's no more valid than if you take a dose of LSD and have the same hallucination. That's not real mysticism. That is not seeking outwardly. That is not seeking into the universe. It cannot be self-induced. In the modern world today, we are reaching a sort of climax. And because we are reaching this climax, which, let's face it, the spirits from all over the world are telling people. You know, it's not just me that's standing here and saying this. I can quote you several books straight away from other psychics in other parts of the world whose message is the same. The Set books of Jane Roberts, bestsellers in the United States. Chelsea Yarborough's book, Messages from Michael. The work of Karen Kuykendall in California, who invented the cat tarot cards, who speaks of the strange country in which the felines dwell and the message they have to give. When I was in Australia recently, I was talking to mediums out there. They knew all about these things because the Aborigines knew. You can't say that Aborigine people, who are simple people, who have had their traditions handed down to them since the beginning of time, you can't say that they're faking information to frighten people. But they know about forthcoming events. The Red Indians know about them. There is a Red Indian chief who is touring this country at the moment, who can tell you from his own traditions all about the Sirius tradition and the people that came from there and the way they're trying to help people on this planet. I'm not alone. I'm very way down the scale in this business. There are people who are concerned with the modern world all over this planet. This is sometimes difficult to get over when one comes into a gathering such as yourselves and you meet people who've never come across this thought before. Because they've never come across it, it doesn't mean to say it doesn't exist. And it doesn't mean to say it isn't worldwide, because it is. We learn all the time. We open our minds, and as we open our minds, we slowly learn. And then we understand. And the next time we hear that concept, it comes easier to us. So let us return to the state of the world at the moment, and all the things which face us in modern life. Because of what faces us, those people who have a sense of responsibility for themselves, their own salvation, the salvation of all other things around them, the ecology of the earth itself, they feel they want to do something, so they turn to mystical pursuits. They turn to mysticism, to meditation, to occult things, to spiritual things. And the division starts to widen between those over there who say, what a lot of rubbish, I don't want to know, as long as I have my television and my wage packet and my pint of beer, that's all I'm concerned with. Or as long as I have money to have the luxuries of the material world, I don't want to know about anything else. By their very attitude, they write their spiritual names above their foreheads, don't they? The uncaring. And yet there are many who masquerade as people who do care. I talked, not so long ago, with some priests of a Benedictine order, and I was particularly horrified against cruelty to animals at the time. And I said to this priest, Father, why don't you get up in your pulpit and tell your faithful to stop this? He said, look, I don't do it in the first place. We're civilized people. Do you think we act like that? We are very caring of animals. We are very caring of the earth. I said, well, tell the other people that aren't. Tell your followers in Italy and places like that, where animals are going around diseased and neglected. Tell them. Oh, he said, they're not worth telling, let's face it. He said, you know, you've got to consider the world as a spiritual garden. He said, at one end there are the roses and the beautiful flowers and the intelligentsia, but at the other end there are the Swedes and turnips and the rubbish heap. These were his very words. And he said, it's no use trying to tell the rubbish heap to stop smelling. Now, how about that? And you'd think a person like that would have compassion, would go along. Any gardener will tell you that if you have a rubbish heap, it can be converted to fertilize the roses and the beautiful flowers, and to make the corn grow. Any farmer can tell you that. Nothing is useless. None of us is useless. We can all contribute something. Very shocking, you know, some of the things you hear from so-called holy people and mystical people. By their deeds shall you know them. And sometimes you hear the old saying, don't do as I do, do as I say. This applies many times, doesn't it? You have to see whether the people who are being so very holy on the surface are really carrying that out throughout their lives. Mysticism in the modern world is very necessary. It is necessary for the balance of our sanity in the forthcoming epoch, because the forthcoming epoch is going to try and test our faith in every way. It is going to test our faith in our fellow human beings, in people's concept of a Godhead, in orthodox religious thinking. It is going to turn us upside down. And it's no use us running away from science, because science is with us. Science will develop, and one has to acknowledge the things which it does. We're very grateful to it if we have a disease and we can get an antibiotic. We're very grateful to it if we break our leg and we can be rushed into hospital and have it mended for us. So let us remember that all things have a place, and that the medical profession is very, very slowly but very surely reaching out to spiritual matters. It is embracing fringe medicines, alternative therapies. And many a doctor, a GP now that you go to, will say to you, have you had acupuncture? Or, as one said to me, I wouldn't take these drugs if I were you, try herbalism. You see, it's coming together. So, on our side, on the spiritual side, we must also see their point of view. It's no use being one-sided. Ultimately, this world should be a point where physics and metaphysics join, as they do in the old country, Atlantis. In Atlantis, science and religion walked hand in hand. A priest was a priest in order to be a doctor or a scientist. And a doctor or a scientist had to understand the spiritual laws. There have been examples of incarnations which I could tell you down the ages. Let us take Paracelsus, who understood these. He understood the nature of disease, and he wrote his book, The Doctrine of Signatures. He's often called the father of modern medicine, and yet he was a mystic, a magician, an astrologer. But he knew that the universal forces, even those as displayed through the planets, had an influence on our lives. And to understand ourselves, we had to understand the universe of which we were a part, not some little cozy section which we think is environed. Because we'll never know the answers. If you stay indoors all your life and never go outside, you'll never know what the world is like or the people in the street down the road. And if one continues on earth to have this parochial attitude, then one will never learn, and it will hold up, retard the whole of the evolution of this planet. If you stay indoors all your life, and never go outside, You'll never know what the world is like or the people in the street down the road. And if one continues on earth to have this parochial attitude, then one will never learn, and it will hold up, retard the whole of the evolution of this planet. To turn to mysticism is wonderful, as long as one does it with one foot firmly on the ground, because we are here in the here and now. And if we get so holy-minded that we are no earthly good, then there's a better quote than that which my husband can give you. Do you remember what it is, Jed?
This was a quote from a Presbyterian minister that I used to know, be very close to many years ago. He said he objected to people being so heavenly minded they were no earthly good.
That's very true, isn't it? You know, that the people who are sort of way up there, and if it comes to something practical down here, they wouldn't want to know. Who is it that stops and picks up a wounded animal in the road, or rushes to the help of somebody who's crying or upset? It's not always the people in the garbs of the ministry, you know. They're too busy worrying about who's pinching the lead off their church roofs, or how much was in the collection. But that's beside the point. We mustn't get onto that, because equally I have met some wonderful people in ministries of all sorts, and you can't make these differentiations. You know, once I remember hearing a guide, I think it was through Horace Hambling, and he said, it was called Moon Trail, and he said, you know, evil or nastiness has to be in all camps or it can't make trouble. You know, it's no good saying, well, they're over there and they're nasties and we're over here and we're good, because, you know, as the good book saith, the best way to topple the house of the strong man is to topple it from within and to knock first out the strong man. So anybody who shows any spiritual strength is going to get a lot of opposition, somebody trying to knock them down very quickly, because if you put light into a dark corner, all the little nasties run away and the cobwebs have to be cleaned. And so you can't do good without upsetting someone or other somewhere along the line. There was reminds me of a true story. I had a very dear friend some years back who used to come on the platform with me. He was a medium. He's now passed over. And we were very young at the time, because I've been in this line of country about 35 years now. And this was about 25 years ago. I'd only been in this about 10 then. It wasn't very long. And we were doing a talk in Croydon. And at the end of it, an older couple stood up and they said to me, you know, you've been talking about evil and about opposition and negative thoughts. Well, we've been running a circle for 25 years and we've never come across them. And my friend, who's now deceased, stood up and said, excuse me, madam, you've obviously never disturbed them. My old nanny used to say, if you pull the devil's tail, he squeaks. So, if you want to be mystical, if you want to have your beliefs, if you want to open out to the universe, there's always going to be somebody who comes along and says, knock, knock, I don't like, you stop, or I don't like you. Or say to them, fair enough then, go on your way with my love and blessing, because I have friends. I have friends. All over the universe I have friends. As a mystic I am not alone. And we can all remember, be a mystic. You don't have to be sitting on a rock in the Himalayas in a loincloth melting the snow. You can be as mystical and as spiritual in your own homes. It's how you think. There's only one thing my master taught me, which is the difference between what man calls good and evil. That is intention. The intention behind anything. If the humblest of people, in the best of intentions, help someone, that is good. If a hardened criminal picks up a child that's falling down, that is good. You can't turn around and judge because you don't know what's in the hearts of people. You may see someone who looks fantastic and you say, oh, they're obviously very good and very spiritual. And then you open your Sunday paper and you read the terrible things about their lives. And you're shocked and disappointed. Your idol has feet of clay, so you never know. Look for your mystic amongst your friends. Look for your mystic in your garden amongst your trees, because there are some wonderful mystical trees, you know. Great mystics trees. They stand and observe, and they take in everything they see. And if you can communicate with them, like the man did who sailed around the world, communicate with them very quietly, you will learn an awful lot, because they have seen things which you've been too busy to notice in the hurry and bustle of your life. Now I'd like to talk to you for a minute about aids to mysticism. Some of us find it very difficult to just sit down and say, be mystical. They say, oh, I can't do that, I can't concentrate, where do I start? Well, there are all sorts of ways, and I remember when I was learning, I look at things like the tarot and astrology and even crystals, and I thought, well, I wish there was something which people could use which was easy, but at the same time which encompassed the wisdom of the ages. And those who look after me inspired me to invent the cartouche cards. Now these are little cards which have symbols on them, and the basically ancient Egyptian symbols, but they're more than that. They are symbols which actually relate to all time periods. They are the universal language of the unconscious or subconscious mind. I put them together, and they're based not only on ancient Egypt but also on psychology, so that people could have them. You don't have to use them to tell your fortune. Each one in itself has a message and can be just used for meditation and mysticism, so that if you feel you want to tune into certain of the angel beings, there's one card you can do that with. If you want to tune into the Divine Mother concept, there is a card for that. Whatever you feel you want to make contact with, there is something there and an explanation. And I have now done, as well as the little tiny pack, I've done a full-size book on it which explains how to use them and how to be your own mystic, if you want to, just within your own home, and to do as much good as you want in a simple way if you are not a creative person yourself who can visualize these things. And some of us, let's face it, we haven't got the sort of minds that can wade through great big books on psychology or mysticism or magical things or ancient history. We haven't the time. We have lives to lead, families to raise, jobs to do. So we want something that we can just sit and will achieve the same result for us. And this is what I tried to do. And if any of you are not familiar with them and with the book, if you like to ask my husband, he'll show it to you after he's doing readings with them. You can do anything with them actually. You can even weather forecast with them. Because what they really do is they relate to your own inner mind, your own subconscious mind. And therefore, you do it for yourself. A psychiatrist could give you a similar set of symbols. But these have also behind them the wisdom of the ages. And if you feel affinity with the old country, with ancient Egypt, with Atlantis, or with pre-Atlantis, where the old ones came from the stars, then you will get your connection through these, because they are geared to whatever level you are on at your particular stage. They adjust to you. Now, I'm not the only one that brings things like this around. There are other ways that you can do this on the modern market, for example. Many people can achieve this consciousness, mystic consciousness, through crystals, which is another one. And there are other methods which you can seek for yourself. But you don't have to be a great intellectual, a great medium, a great psychic to be a mystic. You can be a mystic by simply sensing, understanding and realizing the universe which you live in and contributing in some way to it. opening your eyes to it and sending out love. As I've said, a simple example, open your paper in the morning. You see somebody who's been lost or murdered, just send out thoughts. If that body is found, think of the people who are their loved ones. Send them out some healing thoughts. Send them out some love. And there is a universal law which says as you give out energy, energy comes back to you. It's an exchange of energies. If you give out, it comes back. Any artist performing will tell you this. An artist that goes on to sing or to dance, and they give up their all to their audience. From the audience, it comes back. You can feel it in waves. It comes to you. And it's the same spiritually. If you give out even the smallest thought, it comes back to you. And when I'm talking tomorrow morning on the kingdoms of fairy and diva and the elements, I will tell you how these energies come back to you through the elemental kingdoms and even the air which you breathe. But that's for another talk. But rest assured that whatever you give out and send out, it comes back to you in a way which is best suited to the experiences you have chosen in this life. In other words, if you have chosen the role, a maternal role, let's say in this life, and you send out energies to other suffering people who have lost their children, then that energy won't come back to you as winning the football balls. It will come back to you through rejoicing in the good health and happiness of your own children, because that's your choice of your path. You see how it works. Many people I've met who are in occult matters, they say, oh, of course, I've got into it because I want to get something out of it. That's the wrong attitude. They never will. Because you have to give out first. And you have to give out before anything is given to you. You can't turn around and say, oh, well, I'll do your work if you give me that. No way. That is not going to work for you. You have to give willingly and prove that you can give willingly. And then it will come back to you. In this modern world, we have a great need for mysticism. A great need for it. But I don't myself think, and maybe I'm wrong here, and I could be, and I stand to be corrected, that we need a string a mile long of heavenly-minded gurus with a lot of cash behind them. Good luck to them if that's the way they feel. But I personally would like to see that mysticism in the hearts of each and every one of you here and throughout this planet. And I'd like to see that growth of mysticism in you like a flower, growing, opening to the cosmos. And in that opening, receiving the light of enlightenment and the light of love and the light of understanding and realization and tolerance. The old soul is nothing if not tolerant. If you want to judge the soul age of anyone, one of the first things you look for is their tolerance. And if you see that, you can nod your head. You can say, there's a youngster, a fine and beautiful youngster. They'll grow up. I'm going to stop there and leave it to questions.
So if I can have any questions through the chair, well, sure Murray will be able to answer them. Yes, Derek?
In one of the lectures we had here already, we were told that evil is only in the mind, nowhere else, like evil spirits and certain which come. What is Murray's opinion on this?
Yes. This is a subject which I have actually written about quite extensively in a book which is to come out shortly. The concept of good and evil is one which many people are confused about. There are people who say there is no such thing as evil, it doesn't exist. And on the other hand, there are people who say there is a personal devil, because people who believe, for example, in the Jesus concept say, well, there is also the devil, because he said there was. And so you've got a conflict of opinions. I'll put it to you as it was put to me by those who guide me. when the people are on a planet like this, they have a free will, they have a choice, and that choice, they can either do right, or they can either hurt, or they can heal. They can do something which is nasty, which hurts people. Evil is anything which goes against the cosmic law. Cosmic laws flow in directional impulses towards the Creator, and they flow evenly and beautifully like that. When we flow with the creative forces, we draw our energies from the Creator and we move forward. When we make wrong decisions in our life, which people would call an evil decision, the decision perhaps to put a knife in the back of someone and get rid of them so that we can get their fortune, we reject the energies of light and we turn back and round, as it were. And because we have shut off the light by our act, we then are short of somewhere to draw energy from. So therefore we can start to slip back into a stream where other people have done likewise. And there are other people who have all had evil thoughts, I should say, thoughts created from the mind of people, and the whole thing builds up an energy pattern. Now I've had it explained to me that in a major war, the suffering which is perpetrated in a major war by people who are so-called civilized people, you call it evil for want of a better word, it creates a tremendous force or energy. And people who want to be evil then feed on that force and energy, and it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. And it creates a whole power station, if you like. Now, but it has been created by minds. Minds have created it. We have the choice. We have the choice whether we do this evil or we don't. We have the choice whether we ignore someone or neglect someone or do bad things or not. So in making that choice wrongly, we create an energy force, just the same as if we make the right decision, we create an energy force for good. And those two forces come up against one another, and they create a dualism, which is taught in the Gnostic teachings and which was believed by Jung and many other people. You have the forces of good and evil, which are created by the minds of people. Now, there are going to be people who say to me, yes, but what about, you're not going to tell me that we're the only bad planet in the whole of the universe. Of course we're not. There are other places where the same thing has happened, and force fields have passed from one planet to another sometimes. And but part of our learning here is to distinguish. And what we have to do is to distinguish between these and make the right choice. And until we make the right choice against the negative and the positive, we are always going to get caught up in this nastiness, and we have to make the choice, and the planet at the moment has to make the choice, and that is why people tend to divide. You get the baddies on one side and the goodies on the other. But I personally, and those who guide me, I don't believe that there's a personal old nip with a pitchfork out there at all. I don't think he's going around making nuisance of himself, but I do believe that there are souls who have become caught in this web of evil and who have perpetrated evil themselves when they've been alive, and who can't leave it alone now, no matter what dimension they are in, and who therefore try to draw others into their trap, because the more they draw in, the more energy they have. They eventually learn, but it's like a corrective school, if you like, where you have many naughty children. They can eventually be taught, and maybe it takes several lives for them to learn, but eventually they do. That's, as I see evil, maybe I can put a bit more to it. Yes.
Can we just have, I think, the gentleman from Holland here is next. Thank you.
I was thinking sometimes it's very good to get rid of, sometimes it's so weird. It doesn't cause, keeps mind growing. So in that case, evil is good.
It depends what you mean by hurt. It's very good to be firm, indeed. For example, if you have to raise a child, sometimes it's necessary to hurt that child in order to teach it to be itself and to help itself. So that is a hurt, as you would say, that is necessary, a necessary hurt. And I think sometimes that the powers that be find it necessary not to make us hurt, but to let us hurt ourselves. Because if we didn't hurt ourselves in stumble as we walked along, we'd never be able to learn to walk. So in that way I would say that it is sometimes, but I think the word hurt is maybe wrong, because let's take a situation where two people love each other and then one can no longer return the love, so the other is hurt. Now that's not the sort of hurt I mean. That hurt is all about growing up. It's all about learning that emotions are transient, that deeper emotions are of the soul and not necessarily how our bodies feel, and that's learning. So therefore we are hurt in learning, and that is maybe, as you say, a good hurt. It's a hurt that's good. I see hurt, that the sort of hurts that are wrong is deliberate cruelty, deliberate torture, deliberate desecration of all things which are living. That to me is wrong. It is an energy generated through something which is nasty. That's how I see it.
Can we have Margaret at the back next, please, and then
I was wondering if we can sort of just like a very experience and a very we sat before people, bearing in mind, we had no knowledge of what we were doing. We had no knowledge of the outside.
When anybody's doing this type of work, it depends what training you've had. The way I was trained from the word go was whenever one is sitting and somebody is going to receive an entity of any sort, the first thing one does is to place a protection up, a certain type of protection, and you invoke certain energies who affect this protection. Now, whoever is in charge of that protection should be somebody different from the person who's doing the medium work. For example, if my husband here is under any time, I keep him very well covered. I keep a circle of protection. Now, the person who is covering, called the coverer, should be also a sensitive and very aware. Now, the first, if I have him covered, or I've had many mediums through my hands, because you know I ran the Atlanteans for 21 years, and we trained a whole lot of them. A lot of people like Mary Anderson, people like that, have been through my hands and trained with me. And the first thing I taught them was this covering. Now, if you're covering and you feel a nasty entity coming in, immediately the coverer will close the medium down and bring them round, and then handle it. You handle it, then you can say, right, on your way, and you carry out an exorcism and exorcise it immediately before anything else happens. Then you clear the room. There are certain ways of doing it. You clear everything, clear the atmosphere, and having cleared it, never leave a vacuum. You then invoke the right energies the energies of light, to replace it, and then you replace it with those energies of light. And it can happen. We've all had it. We've woken up in the night. I woke up myself in the night recently with a terrible, terrible nightmare. An evil force has come at me, and I've jumped back in my body, and it's come after me. Up, wash your hands, clear the room, invoke the energies of light. Breathe deeply, clear yourself, tune into the right sources, go back to sleep, and all's well. It's a little bit of training that does it, but I'll tell you that this can happen, and I've seen it over and over again. I ran a healing group for 21 years in the Earls Court Road, and time and time again, the psychic casualties which were brought into us, we would clear them, take out the entity, clear it away. They used to get possession cases. We'd do all that stuff and clear them. On their way, they were fine. And often they'd get quite suicidal. We'd have to clean them up, tidy them up. And the police used to bring them to us. We had a police station just opposite our house, and they'd bring them over. They'd say, oh, we've just caught this young lady trying to jump off the bridge. The churches are all closed, they don't want her. The medical profession doesn't want her because she's not actually ill in their terminology. She hasn't broken an arm, so they won't take her in casualty. Can you take her in? We'd take her in. We'd sort them out. They'd have an abreaction, usually break down and often scream and cry, and then we'd calm them, bring them into alignment, they're all into alignment, bring the right energies in, and clear them up and tidy them up. Now, a lot of people who work in the psychic aren't trained in these disciplines, unfortunately. And that is why I try to institute things like I have with cartouche, which are little ways you can do this for yourself, you see. Because if you just open yourself like this, anything that's going past is going to pop in. And the universe is not full of lovely, lovely angelic beings with pretty wings. There's all sorts of things out there. There's even, as Dion Fortune will tell you, there is even what's known as a psychic police force. And the Christians call them the seraphim, but I'll be talking about those on tomorrow morning. But there are ways you can call home. But you reminded me of a story which was told to me by Fanny Craddock. You know Fanny Craddock, the blonde with the... Well, she was a very good medium, as you know, deep trance medium. And her guide was a being from Atlantis. And he used to teach her many things, and her husband used to work with her, and they worked together. Well, a woman came to her who conceived a child, and from the moment she'd conceived this child, everything had gone wrong. She'd been sick, she'd been not normally sick, but really ill and foaming at the mouth and really peculiar. And the husband was absolutely desperate, and they'd given her drugs at the hospital, and they said, oh, well, she's gone mental. Having the child made her go mental. So they brought her to Fanny, and they said, look, could your guide do something with this poor woman? Well, she went into trance, and the guide said, yes, there's an entity here, an evil entity has entered, but I can take it out, but I do warn you, if I take the entity out, you will lose the child because the entity is hanging on to the fetus. Take one away and put one aboard. So she said, the husband said yes, and the wife said yes, rid me of this, whatever it is, please rid me of it. And all right, so then Fanny, the guide came out of Fanny, and this is a technique which I don't believe in using, but which some people use. And Johnny kind of called the entity out, and Fanny took it on. And she writhed and swore and rolled on the floor, and then he exorcised it out of her, and it went on its way. She came round, she was tired, and the woman immediately had pains, was rushed to the hospital, lost the child, was perfectly normal afterwards, but when they removed the child, it was peculiar. It was misshapen and had strange, ugly and peculiar. And this is absolutely true story. And no, it is, oh goodness, if you work with the Jesuits, if you say you're a Catholic, I've known Jesuits and I've talked to Jesuits and I've spent a lot of time talking to them, and they will confirm all these things because they are specialists in that belief, in doing that sort of thing. Although the thing which amazes me is so many people in Christianity don't understand this. You know, they don't realise that there's a whole branch of their own faith which deals with this sort of stuff. And unless they come in contact with it, they don't know about it, you see, but it's there. And often the Jesuits will call on people who are trained up properly, especially in France. They will call on them for help. They will say, I can't handle this, could you give us a hand? And people who have the right training will be called to do this, sometimes with ritual. And I've written a book about this called Practical Techniques of Psychic Self-Defense, which is only a little book, we have it on sale here, and it explains all these things. But it's so easy to attract energies which are not very nice if you are wide open. If you want to sit and be your own mystic, please do, but please observe the disciplines, please have a nice little system which you do it through, which has a closed gate. The ancient Egyptians had a little figure, a figure of Anubis. You know, I wear one round here on my neck here. Little dog with a long bushy tail. And he was the guardian, and he guarded against the lower astral. He was the guardian of the lower astral. And he had been given the right of access through all the dark realms when none could touch him, and he could protect. And he could escort the soul through those realms in safety. So the ancient Egyptians, when they did their little workings and their psychic scryings in bowls of beautiful clear water, which they did, when they did that, they would invoke Anubis or Bas, because a wonderful protection is a cat. And the Egyptians knew this. The cats are here on this planet to protect against the lower astral. An old soul cat will protect you fantastically. I've seen this with my own eyes. I saw a medium in trance, Edwin Naylor, in trance, and I was myself covering, and I thought there's something here. And this little black and white cat we had got up, and his back arched, and he was at it and after it, and he got rid of it before I got rid of it. And this is true as I stand here, and I have other witnesses who could tell you. And so the animals often know more than we do. And so I was trying to say last night, never underestimate an animal. Never.
because they are often little quiet souls, humble little souls that rely on us for our food. But believe you me, what they give us is fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.